introduce your question.
Thanks, Lascan. Well, Minister, I think you told us at the end of 2017 there were then almost 260 dog breeding establishments registered with the various local authorities, and 36 of them, I think, were registered in Limerick City and County, 35 in Cork and 28 in Wexford. And then I have the varying numbers, I think, that you sent us down. And the inspection fees amounted to €83,000. But between 2013 and 17, there were 4 closure notices and 31 improvement notices issued. But 4 of the 10 improvement notices, of course, Minister, were appealed to the District Court. So I'm just anxious to know then what are the number of inspections by county in 2016, 17, 18 and to date, and the outcome of the breaches of those guidelines, and if you make a statement on the matter. Thanks, Cian.
Thank you, Deputy. Thanks for the question. My department has overall responsibility for the Dog Breeding Establishment Act 2010. Statistics on the dog-related activities undertaken by local authorities are published on the department's website. These include information on dog breeding establishments, which are defined within legislation as premises with 6 or more bitches over 6 months old and capable of being used for breeding purposes. The stats show that the total number of dogs breeding establishments registered for all counties was 248 in 2016, 258 in 2017. The total number of inspections was 250 in 2016 and 275 in 2017. There were 79 commercial dog breeding establishments in 2016, 74 in 2017. The remainder were hunt clubs, boarding kennels and animal welfare shelters. Details by county are available on the website and will be provided to the deputies separately. The 2018 stats will be collated and published in early 2019. Local authorities are responsible for operational activities, including enforcement. Where appropriate, they may issue improvement notices or closure notices, or work with the owners of premises to ensure compliance. In this context, the local authorities also work closely with the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, as the enforcement of welfare standards for all animals, including dogs, is a matter for that department.
1 minute.
Thanks, Cian. Well, I mean, one of the unusual things about this, Minister, is that effectively we have 3 departments: your own department, the Minister for Agriculture, Food and Marine, and the Minister for Housing, Planning and Local Government. The responsibilities are divided between the 3, which is very unsatisfactory. It's a bit like traffic law between justice and transport. But we still have this really bad international reputation at times as being the puppy farm capital of Europe. And I noticed that the Secretary of State, Gove, is planning to introduce legislation to crack down on puppy farms and puppy smuggling, particularly with the illegal trade, this alleged illegal trade in this country highlighted as being a major issue. And in fact, they want to inaugurate a regime where they will outlaw third-party sales and say you can only buy a puppy from a legitimate breeder. Now, we still have horror stories coming in of illegal breeders being discovered with dogs, maybe hundreds of dogs in very bad conditions, and there's a huge responsibility, I think, on the department. Now, my colleague Deputy Claire Daly, of course, raised these issues many times with your predecessors, and I've been informed that she's been in contact with your office to request that you made, I think, your predecessor, Deputy Coyne, he agreed to meet the voluntary groups, very distinguished animal rights activists, to meet them in relation to the whole area of animal rights and in relation to the inspection of dog breeding establishments and indeed of the new guidelines from January 2019. So, Minister, I know you're a minister that does try to reach out to people. Will you guarantee that you will meet those activists as soon as possible?
Minister, 1 minute.
Absolutely. If the commitment has been made by Minister Kine, I will honour that commitment, and my officials will be in contact with the Deputy on that. And you're right to say that there are 3 departments involved in the overall control of dogs. my department is very much involved in the policy area, and just to say to you that the dog breeding establishment guidelines were published in July of 2018, come into effect in January 2019, and I think that is a basis. It has been very, very well received by people in the business of dog breeding, and has been very well received. Of course, people would say that we should be going further with certain aspects of it, but I think this guideline needs a bit of time to work. And the other area is the local authorities or the enforcement agencies, and the Department of Agriculture, as I say, have the overall responsibility for welfare of animals, which includes dogs. But I will guarantee you that from what I have seen, the three departments work very closely together to ensure that there's a huge shift towards the focus of welfare of dogs and puppies, and that's what it's all about.
A final question.
Yeah, certainly is, Minister. I think the public, we love our dogs, and we want to ensure that. I mean, the dog breeders that they breed and rear dogs in very good conditions and treat dogs very well. Now, the key point you make is in relation to local authorities. But when the new guidelines, I have them here in front of me, when they and there's some good aspirations in them, but when they come into force, will you be able to give the local authorities additional resources? Because the number of inspections each year seems to be, it seems to be very low. It does come down at the end of the day to the number of inspections and enforcements, and breeders being able to go to into the court system and so on. In relation to this, is very significant. As you know, there was a huge response from the public. I think there was well over 100 submissions on the dog breeding guidelines between December and February, December 2016, February 2017. But I mean, the key point obviously is enforcement. We still get, as I said, the horror stories like the 86 dogs rescued from an illegal establishment in Roscommon, and Dogs Trust, of course, ISPCA, on behalf of the public, then had to look after those animals who are often in very bad conditions. So, Minister, the other thing under the 2010 Act, I think, which was brought in, or which was last time was reviewed, was by Deputy Hogan, I think, when he was the Minister here. The ratio of staff under the guidelines, I think it's still 1 to 25, rather than 1 to 10 in terms of breeding dogs. That was advocated in the guidelines. Thanks, Cairn.
Minister, 1 minute.
And first of all, say that the funding to the local authorities is through the local government fund, not through my department. But I take on board what you're saying, and I will bring that back to the department to Minister Murphy's department. Just say that the guidelines that are there have followed a huge consultation with all stakeholders, and I think that is very important. That what is there now is guidelines that would help the local authorities, it would help the vets, and it would also help the established dog breeders establishments which are working properly. It will give them the necessary guidelines to make sure that they continue to do that. Of course, there are issues around illegal activities happening, and I think the more we talk about it and the more we highlight it, I think the better it is for the welfare of the animals. And coming from a rural